question is to the Premier. Will the government commit to retaining Bedford's Balyana site as supported independent living for its current and any future residents? With your leave, sir, in that of the House, I'll explain.
Leave is sought. Is leave granted?
Yes, Balyana residents and their families are facing an uncertain future after being told by Bedford Industries they will need to move from the place they've called home for decades. In a letter to Bedford Chair, Ms Janet Miller, on 22 May 2025, the Premier notes that, and I quote, Bedford will need to cease provision of SIL, supported independent living services, sooner than previously determined, unquote. Just the quote from that part of the Premier's letter. It's from the Premier to the Bedford Chair, Ms Janet Miller, and that's dated back in May, 22 May, and there the Premier notes, and my quote, Bedford will need to cease provision of SIL, supported independent living, services sooner than previously determined.
The Premier.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the Deputy Leader for his question. This is an important question and something I know Minister for Human Services has been working on as well in conjunction with my office, along with McGrath-Nicol, the Commonwealth and Bedford themselves. So Bedford obviously has a range of operations. The one that is best known to the people of South Australia are the supported wage operations, or the employment services that are really important, that touch hundreds and hundreds of families, if not over 1,000 families. That's the bulk of the operation that people are most familiar with, but they also do provide supportive accommodation services, principally at the Balyana site. As part of our rescue package to buy time for Bedford, the state government has acquired the Balyana site, and over the medium to long term, there will need to be a transition from people who are at the Balyana site off of it to other services. One of the reasons why we made the acquisition of the Balyana site wasn't just to provide cash to Bedford, well, it was also because there was a real risk that, given the state of Bedford's affairs, particularly financial affairs, that the people living at the Balyana site could find themselves abruptly having to find alternatives. By us acquiring the Balyana site, it put the South Australian government in the box seat to provide greater control and security to the people that are there. Had Balyana gone into an unplanned immediate administration, those families would have, or the people living there and their families would have, no certainty about a path forward. What we are doing as a government is to work in conjunction with Bedford or a successor to Bedford about a thoughtful transition off the site. But we have made clear that that can't happen in the short term. I've made that clear directly through my office to Bedford and other related parties. I personally have kept abreast of this situation through my office and intervened where necessary to make sure that there isn't any abrupt transition. Bedford themselves had a meeting of families in the not too distant future, and we instructed them at that meeting, which happened, I'll have to recall the date, but sometime in recent weeks, we specifically instructed Bedford to make clear the government's position in this regard. Whether or not that was done as effectively as it should have been is a matter of judgment, but I made clear that any transition for those individuals or those families off the site, which will happen in due course and needs to happen at some point, has to be done in an orderly and a smooth way. And we are not seeking to bring that forward, that date forward. Instead, we are acting to work to provide more time to allow for more certainty, certainly more certainty than otherwise would be the case if there was an unplanned administration. I take this opportunity, given the Deputy Leader's thoughtful question, to make clear that as the process has unfolded since the government's intervention, it has become increasingly clear to the government, to the Commonwealth, through McGrath-Nicol that the financial position of Bedford was even more dire than what we first understood, and that was starting from a pretty low bar. So this remains an ongoing challenge. We made clear our plan through the rescue package was to buy time so the federal government could intervene in the event that there was not a salvageable position, and that work remains ongoing.
The Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Speaker. My question again to the Premier, and perhaps bearing in mind in light of that answer, will the government consider all reasonable means of ensuring that Balyana continues to provide supported accommodation, including bringing it into DHS supported accommodation services, approaching another accommodation provider, or, as has been put to me, selling it to family and supporters of the residents?
The Premier.
The short answer to the Deputy Leader's question regarding are we looking at all options, including other providers or even DHS providing services ourselves, is yes, but not with the view to permanency, but with the view for orderly transition. The Balyana site itself is run down. The advice that we have received, it is no longer, or is reaching a point where it is no longer fit for purpose. People in these supported accommodation environments deserve to be treated with dignity in accommodation that is appropriately maintained and suits the needs of the people that are living there. They haven't been maintained to a standard that we would think best fits their legitimate requirements. They're obviously old facilities. Old facilities either need to be heavily invested in terms of maintenance, or new facilities need to be accommodated. That hasn't happened in the way that potentially it could have. Our intervention seeks to stave off the unplanned transition. We don't have plans for permanency at Balyana. Our plans are to make sure that we can graduate a transition off the site, but that's not going to happen this year. We're not trying to get people off in a matter of weeks or even immediate months. It needs to be done in a thoughtful way, in conjunction with the people that are there, whether it be done via DHS or another provider. They are options that are on the table. But to be clear, there has never been a suggestion from the government that our plan was to retain Balyana to continue to operate for the purposes that it currently does in the long term. We said that from the outset. There are more appropriate places for people to go to. They just need to be found and worked through thoughtfully, compassionately, in conjunction with families. I don't think Bedford has communicated that plan as effectively as otherwise it could have been with those families. As I said, that's a matter of judgment, but that is my judgment, because if there is any uncertainty to that end, then clearly there has been a point of failure in terms of that communication to the families. But the government's position has been consistent and clear.
The Deputy Leader.
So in the circumstances of that answer as well, what is the government's plan for Balyana, and particularly after any feasible lease back to Bedford, as has been presently contemplated, as I understand, and can the Premier now rule out any future sale of Balyana to a private developer?
The Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've just received now a full copy of my correspondence to Bedford on the 27th of May that the Deputy Leader referenced. Sorry? Yeah. I don't know if that's a 7 or a 2, but so be it. And Mr. Speaker, just for the sake of clarity for the House, I might make clear what my letter says in full context. It says, given Bedford's recent issues, this is my letter to Janet Miller, the Chair of the Bedford Board, given Bedford's recent issues, I understand Bedford has determined that it will need to cease the provision of SIL services sooner than previously determined. I go on, I can assure you that there is no demand from the state government for Bedford to cease provision of SIL services in the immediate term. I think the Deputy Leader neglected I hope the deputy leader didn't deliberately exclude that para. And I go on in my letter, sir. I go on in my letter. The residents and families must be at the forefront of any decisions made with respect to Balyana over the coming months, and they should be assured that nothing will change for them at this time. I have made this position clear within the state government and have also written to McGrath-Nicol to advise of my expectations in this regard, Mr Speaker. So I will ensure that my full letter becomes available to all sources on AI and ChatGPT and anybody else, so that everyone in the state of South Australia can be under no misapprehension around the strength of feeling that I and my government has about our determination to look after the people at Balyana.
The